Hello and welcome to NTV Wild Talk with me, Smriti Vidyarthi. Today we're coming to you from the home of someone that you would perhaps ordinarily not associate with conservation. That is the renowned industrialist Dr. Manu Chandaria. But in fact, there is a connection. Watch this. The name Manu Chandaria resonates with many. The Kenyan businessman of Indian descent has been instrumental in the world of industry. Dr. Chandaria is the founding chairman of the East African Business Council and the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, an umbrella body representing hundreds of sectors and organizations. The entrepreneur and philanthropist has always been vocal about development issues, but also feels passionately about the reduction of poverty and the protection of nature and wildlife. It is a side that perhaps many don't see as often enough, but Manu Chandaria is on the board of the International Fund for Animal Welfare. He has actively been involved in wildlife-related projects, such as erecting a fence in Taita Taveta to mitigate human-wildlife conflict, contributing to a light aircraft for anti-poaching patrols in Tsavo, and participating in World Wildlife Days and the 2015 Ivory Burn, among others. And he often shares his words of wisdom about the importance of safeguarding nature. So really, yes, there is a connection between Manu Chandaria, wildlife and conservation, but who'd have known? Well, now I have him sitting right with me to find out much more about that link. Thank you, Manu Chandaria, for joining us on NTV Wild Talk.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Now, you are so well renowned and so well respected in the world of industrialization and manufacturing and business. You are also, however, well respected in the conservation world, but not many people are aware of this. Why did you get involved in conservation?
Well, I think that many years back I started thinking about it. People started discussing about forestation and the forestation of Kenya, and when we heard that from 11% of forest cover we've almost gone to 1.5%. And that just hurt me. And so I started becoming vocal about it and become so vocal that somebody noticed it from overseas. That how about this guy, and how about asking this guy why is he doing this? To me, I'm a Jain, number one, and we believe that everything has got a life and we should preserve them. And there's no way we can just hurt, kill, or do anything about that. So some of them came down to ask me. I said, hey, would you give us a interview? And it'd be all over Europe and United States on conservation. And I said, sure. And I was very clear that we are not paying attention. The government is not giving enough time and understanding that what is the long-term effect. You cut one tree today, the effect of that is going to be long-term. And it takes another years before you can grow a tree. So, but, you know, it was not on the main menu of the government to say what is good conservation. Anything that was going good, okay. So I was very, very critical about it. And because I was critical, they wanted to have an interview. I gave an interview, and it was, and so somebody again saw that interview in the States. And he came down and said that we'd like to come and talk to you. And I said, sure. So they came along, and then they looked at me and asked me, what am I doing, ABCD. They were also wondering, there's an industrialist, why is he interested in all this? But he knew that I can make my voice heard.
Right.
That they knew. So he said that, would you like to join IFAO, International Fund for Animal Welfare? And I said, well, what is it? And then explained to me that we are looking after this species worldwide. And this is one of the largest institution which collects money and then uses it in various places, and the 9 offices. One is in East Africa. So I told him, okay. He said, well, we're not promising, but we'd like you to be sitting on our board. I said, look, I can't travel every 2 months or every 3 months to the United States. He said, no, we've got only 2 meetings face-to-face. The remaining 2 meetings are on telephone. So I told him, all right, I'll make it 1 meeting, United States, and not more. Now, that started giving me another platform to discuss the issues, that what can be done. And because of my connections with various ministries and the government at the top, that I could raise this issue.
Right.
Now, people normally go to the government and raise that, always, I've got a problem in my industry. And majority time, I don't. I never talk about my own issues. I talk about poverty. I talk about conservation. I talk about forestation. I talk about bad education. These are the issues that, so I started being heard overall.
And Dr. Chandaria, before you started being heard, you mentioned that when you heard about the deforestation and the fact that Kenya's forest cover had reduced, it hurt you. How did that really make you feel? Why did it hurt you? Because your ordinary CEO or industrialist might not even think twice when they hear a tree is being cut down. Why did it hurt you?
No, it hurt me because I love trees, I love forest, I love wildlife. You're sitting here today. We're in the middle of Nairobi, but you know you can hear the birds. Now, love for conservation and love for nature is what it should be within you first, but many times it's never awakened. There are people who should really push hard and tell them, hey, maybe you are just in your day-to-day life, you're not thinking about it. Now, can you open your eye and see these beautiful things? And so I think that nature is something which is irreplaceable. And to me, when it hurts, and when it then understands that because of there will be no water, because there will be less rain, that the climate will change. So I have, at a very young age, I'd gone to the United States. I'd understood that world is so big, and there are so many countries doing so many things. And when you come back over here, you feel that you're in a village, and smaller than a village. So, to me, it was saying that what is good, what is here that we have? So we have got beautiful forests, got beautiful flowers, got beautiful games. So I started taking interest. Basically, the cultivation of interest is purely subconscious. You feel for them, feel for the trees. When I took this house, it was interesting. When I took this house, this was a colonial house, and we were not supposed to come to Muthaiga. If you just trespass, they will catch you and take you to the police station. And in this house, when I saw the documents, the lady has said that only people of Caucasian race or white Caucasian race can live in this house. Really? And all others will stay in the servants' quarters. And she wanted, and she had put it in the papers, that all the boundary will have trees before, and any tree cut, 2 trees should be planted. Wow. And I said, why would that woman in 1929, before just the time when I was born, this house was built, why would they put all these clauses? Because I think that they have something to give back. And I thought that was something, it touched me. And I felt that, look, it's my duty. Many times they said, oh, what's your opinion? I said, it's not my opinion. It's my duty to bring this in forefront.
Right. Well, let's go back to what you were talking about earlier, the connection with the government and being heard. You have all these years used your position as a renowned industrialist to better the world of industrialization, but you've also used your experience to better the world of conservation. How have you done that?
You see, when I came over here, the first 15 years of my life was from Mombasa, building from nothing to something. From Mombasa, Kampala, stayed few years in Kampala, went back to Mombasa, went to Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, stayed few years in Dar es Salaam, and then I ended up back in Nairobi. I was born in Nairobi, but it's so that only a few years I lived in Nairobi, so I went away. And so when I went away from Nairobi, and I came back, and after about a couple of years, I started finding that, look, there's no connection between the government and the private sector. Whether it's business, whether it's hoteliering, whatever it is, there's very little connection. And all they were looking is that, in clear words would be, let's say, business people are crooks. and we used to say that these are bureaucrats who are only want to make money, that's it. So there was no platform. And yet we had associations. So I said, well, why associations are not making any noises? You must have some guts to make noise. So I joined KM, and I became a director before long.
That's the Kenya Association of Manufacturers.
Yeah, Kenya Association of Manufacturers. I became vice chairman, I became a chairman. I changed the constitution, and I wanted people of the top in the industry, because we are a manufacturing association. So anybody who is on the top must be sitting and giving their time for creating a better environment for businesses. If the better environment is not there, businesses do not grow. And that was the purpose. And I started pleading with lots of other people, making them to understand that why they should be coming and sitting there, giving their time. And many of them, most of them agreed. And so the Kenya Association of Manufacturers became a strength. So did FKE, it became a strength. There are 200 other associations, but you hardly hear any of them. But some of them become so strong because they had the power and they had a conviction to discuss with the government bilaterally, not taking their examples, but overall good of the country. And when you start talking about good of the country and not good of me, myself, that is the time the people start listening to you. And so the KM became a very powerful organization. That gave me an understanding and a position to go to the government and speak. And because I don't speak for myself, I speak for the group of people and what's good for it. Now, that's business. Because I'm business, they'll say, oh, yeah, but it's a businessman. But then when I talk about poverty, then I talk about conservation.
Right, and there is of course a link between what you're saying and conservation, about getting everyone together under one umbrella body and communicating with the government. Now we know in conservation as well there are so many different organizations all spread out doing different things, but some of them doing the same thing, and therefore the results aren't maximized. So how then are you using your experience to influence the world of conservation in that respect?
Yeah, when Judy became the Minister of Environment, and together with the Ministry looking after the conservation, she knew what I was doing, because she was a professor at the University of Nairobi, and I was the longest serving member of the Council of University of Nairobi. So she knew about it, and we had a conversation, and she said, Manu, how about, I said, there are so many of them. So why don't we just get all of them together and build what you call a momentum, a feeling within them that, look, if we probably do lots of other things, we repeat itself, spending the same time and same money on I look after these elephants and you look after that elephants. Instead of that, how about getting together and to get that particular point through? She knew it. And so she said, yes, it's working. So she started talking. And then she asked me to go to Naivasha when they had called a meeting and asked me to speak. And I said, listen, my example of both creating KEPSA, which I'd already created that time, creating KEPSA, my experience in KM, my experience in East African Business Council, shows me that unless we all get together and sing the same song, not different songs, not saying something over here. And unless you detach yourself from your interest, but the interest of what you are talking about. If your interest is animals, talk about animals, not you. You are a secondary person because another is also doing something about animals. But the common target is animals. How can we save them? How can we protect them? And to bring that attention and that attitude and giving time for things which are not in your normal day-to-day curriculum. I'm in business. I don't have the time to go for association and look after the games and
Right.
look after street children. And no,
Yeah.
why should I be doing that? But if I cannot develop myself and see this as my country and say anything that hurts my country's development, I will speak. And I think that people started accepting and appreciating that I'm not speaking for myself. I have not have any bias. That look, I don't like other animals, I only like elephants. To me,
Right.
all animals are same.
Right.
So to me, people started taking them as an interested party, and so they call me, they discuss with me. I'll have time whenever they want me to go there. I think that what is required is a positive attitude of the people of Kenya. We cannot change everything, but at least if we cannot get together to show where the problems are and how the problems can be resolved and bring it to their attention. Maybe we might not be able to do anything further than that, but to bring to the attention is most important.
Certainly.
And that's what I've been doing. Yeah.
And that's where we are also with the Conservation Alliance of Kenya. That is now the umbrella body.
Yeah.
And the way that will work will be based on the way KEPSA and CAM and all of those organizations have worked as well. There's plenty more to discuss, but we need to take a short break here on NTV Wild Talk. Do stay with us. You can join this conversation using the hashtag NTV Wild on Twitter, or also like our NTV Wild Facebook page and connect with us there. My conversation with Dr. Manu Chandaria continues after the break. But first to our wild guest question. We ask, what was the reason for Manu Chandaria becoming vocal about conservation? What was the reason for Manu Chandaria becoming vocal about conservation? To participate, you must like the NTV Wild Facebook page and post your answer on the timeline associated with this question. The first person to answer correctly wins one night for two people at the wonderful Pearl Palace Superior Hotels. The winner also gets one bottle of wine, courtesy of Wines of the World, and a gift hamper, courtesy of Wildlife Direct. Terms and conditions apply, which can be found on the NTV Wild Facebook page. Last week's lucky winner was Mariam Kamau. Welcome back to NTV Wild Talk. Here's a reminder of our wild guest question. What was the reason for Manu Chandaria becoming vocal about conservation? What was the reason for Manu Chandaria becoming vocal about conservation? To participate, you must like the NTV Wild Facebook page and post your answer on the timeline associated with this question. The first person to answer correctly wins one night for two people at the wonderful Pearl Palace Superior Hotels. The winner also gets one bottle of wine, courtesy of Wines of the World, and a gift hamper, courtesy of Wildlife Direct. Terms and conditions apply, which can be found on the NTV Wild Facebook page. Last week's lucky winner was Mariam Kamau. And now my conversation with Dr. Manu Chandaria continues about his link to conservation. Now, before we took the break, you talked about countries developing and the importance of that. When you look at Kenya over the years, of course, it has developed immensely. But there are some areas that are causing a lot of controversy and concern. And that one area, for example, is the standard gauge railway. Now, the aim of that, of course, is to spur development. And as an industrialist, but also as a conservationist, what are your views about the SGR? Because it is going straight through the Nairobi National Park.
Well, I look at this way. I don't like to hurt, but there are always, when you're driving, there are things going to be hurt. People might not like it, but there are routes of development, and of those routes, if you closed, like that, this country was opened up thanks to the Uganda Railways when we built in 1892. And that opened up the whole country, not only Kenya, but East Africa.
Yeah.
Now, but for 125 years, we've done nothing. And this has not been, when we were in 120 years back, we were in line with what was happening. Today we are not. And so we must make sure that you cannot close the lines and see how you can do that with the least amount of hurt to the nature, number one. But if you just say, no, I'm not going to allow anything to happen, then you know, our people, which today government accepts 46% are below poverty line. But really, in actual fact, when you count, it might be more than 50. That means what? Our children go to bed, sometimes with half a meal, sometimes with no meal. Now, this is not acceptable. Now, what is stopping that? Stopping that is that the cost of transportation is too high. You can get the same goods from Japan, from the United States, wherever, comes and lands in Mombasa, and from Mombasa to Nairobi, it costs what it costs over there 10 times. Now, this is not on. Not only on for us, but we as Kenya, because God has given us a great coastline, we have a responsibility, ethical responsibility, to make very sure that why should a Rwandan, why should an Eastern Congo spends 20% more than, or 30% more than us? Why? Yeah. Just because you don't have the corridor to grow. So, after long decisions and thinking, I was the chairman of the STD, of Standard Gauge Railway, because to me, there was no way you can improve the standards unless you move and create jobs. Now, what does the SDG going to do? It's going to open up the port. Port will ultimately become double the size. The railway will just move right up to the inner part of the country. And that means the goods will start flowing, not only from outside, but from our own goods also.
And what about the impact it's having on the environment and
yes,
conservation?
it will have. So now the point is that you've got to choose. Do you choose the minimum hurt? And if you don't choose the minimum hurt, you hurt yourself. So it's, to me, as a nation, whenever such decisions are taken, yes, it is difficult. Like when Hoover Dam was built, there was a big upcry. Same thing, big dams were built, there was huge upcries about environment. But overall good, when you start thinking, when you talk about 8 million people when we got independence, but today 45 million people. Now how are you going to manage this? So any development, you must always wait. Wait in that are they bringing the lives of the people better? If we don't want a normal Kenyan born and dead with not having any and bringing a hopeless and helpless life,
right,
that we should. So I think that yes, you should pay as much attention as possible. I believe in conservation, but many a times I also believe that, look, I cannot see when I go to the slums, when I go to the villages, I cry because to me it's not on.
Sure, of course. I think the issue of the standard gauge railway certainly is one that does, it is a delicate one, and as you say, all factors need to be considered.
You have to weigh.
Of course.
You have to weigh. Everything is to weigh.
Now, you touched on the issue of ethics, and politics in this day and age is leading the way. Every little thing is dotted with politics, including conservation. There are many areas where politicians are involved, especially, or at least alleged to be involved, when we look at herding of cows in parks and things like that, that then lead to human-wildlife conflict. What is your view about politics and conservation?
Now today, the politics, every country has politics, but when you move politics above economics, above the welfare of the people, that politics has no meaning.
Yeah.
And we have seen in Africa all over the time. And that's why we are never getting up. Now, it didn't take 1,000 years for tiger countries to come up. 30 years.
Yeah.
And they were up like this. What are we doing? And I keep on arguing the case of Africa, that yes, Africa is the 21st century only country which has got everything to offer, everything to exploit, everything to build. And yet, are we going to do it?
Well, how do you think that politicians and leaders in our country need to get better involved in conservation matters?
No, I think that the first thing is that they must first become Kenyans. They are Kenyans by passports, they are Kenyan by birth, but they are not Kenyans by thought. If you don't believe in Kenya and you don't want this soil to, you can sell anything tomorrow. You sold all our elephants, killed so many of them. Why? This is the fundamental issue that every person must be fundamentally first discuss, that if you are not a Kenyan, why? Why can't we make a good Kenyan out of you?
Of course.
So our education system, our philosophical thinking, our political trends must all be on that side to build a country, to build a nation which will be considered by everybody, will say, wow, that's a nation.
You know, earlier in our conversation, you talked about your religion. What role does your religion play in influencing your decisions when it comes to conservation?
Well, my religion says that, you know, everything is alive. Not only human beings, but even plants have lives. And even 2,500 years back, I think the Tirthankar Mahavir said that who does not consider nature and preserve nature will ultimately be destroyed themselves. So the feeling of that is to have compassion. Actually, it's nothing more than that. Yeah. We can say compassion towards you or compassion towards the population, but when you say the compassion even towards the plants, if these plants have not got the water and it's limping, I'll call my boy. I say, what are you doing? It hurts me.
Yeah.
Now the question is that how are we going to get hurt by not things which we can control, but we don't want to?
Sure.
Yeah. So I think that the basis is on ourselves ethical responsibilities of being a Kenyan, being a human being. Now, elephants are not ours alone. They are for thousands of years to come, for people and for generations to see. And if they are only going to paint a picture and say, well, that's an elephant, what we are doing for dinosaur today. Yeah. Why?
Do you think that other religious leaders need to improve and up their game as well and use their religions to conserve?
Well, I think that everybody conserves. Religion hasn't got any different, but the application of religion, application of telling that how can you influence to be better? If you want to be better, my principle is live and let live. If you live alone, everybody lives. Everybody is just selfish enough to live. But to live and let others live, needs a heart bigger than your size.
Of course.
Now, unless and until you can make that happen, and my so many years of life that I've spent in these countries shows me that I think that the basic education is so poor, so I said mechanical, that you don't teach the values, and without values, values has got, there is no answer to value. Why sky high? Well, you can jump from top to bottom.
Right.
It's high is high, that's all. So I think basic values of goodness, and it's nothing but goodness. An average Kenyan is much good than many countries that I've been. And I live in many countries. We have investments in many countries, but it's much better. But it's not shaped yet. Yeah, you need to shape them.
When you look at Kenya, you've lived here for so many years of your life. What worries you about our current situation when it comes to environment and conservation matters? Because we are dealing with cases of poaching, we are dealing with human-wildlife conflict due to population growth, the bushmeat trade as well. What are your thoughts on what's happening today?
Well, to me, I think that we need to bring the people to realization that, today we are selling elephants is worth value. Elephants not only worth value, for what? Just because there's an elephant as much as you are. If somebody wants to knock me off, I'm sure somebody's going to say, no, sorry, I'm not going to allow that. So let's not look at the commercial value of nature. You can't put values on that nature. This plant is 55 shillings and that flower is 2,000 shillings. No. It's the beauty. It's the absorption of nature that brings you more to your originality rather than everything that we say. So to my way of looking is very simple, that let our people start realizing it's ours. And let's keep what is ours in a better way. If whatever happens, if you start taking from my pocket, I will guard it. Why don't we guard ourselves, our country? Conservation is nothing but that. And is it that children are going to go to school, they're going to sleep without food? Why? Because there's no rain? Yeah. Why? Because we keep hooked up in tree? Why? Ask yourself right from the beginning and tell the child from the beginning, hey, no. If you can't cut it, if you can't plant a tree, but don't cut a tree.
Right.
And tell them, plant 2 trees instead. If you want to repent of anything that you've done wrong today, go and plant a tree.
Yeah.
And let every child in this country have a tree in his name. And say, this is Manu Chandaria's tree. This is your tree.
Yeah.
That's when we will start realizing the love and affection of nature. And love and affection for nature, you see, is becoming so absolute. We are not prepared to look at it. If I'm not prepared to look at the garden here, then, to me, I'm just blank.
Are you confident about Kenya's future with regard to its environment and conservation matters?
Yes, I'm sure, because there is getting more and more discussion. But like media, why shouldn't we speak about it every week? We read about garbage every day. Why don't we just speak about this? Our schools, our churches, our community places. Everywhere, when we go about it, we talk about nature, conservation, it's ours. Because if we have best of the forest, India, look at India, highly populated, small country in size compared to Africa, 22% forest cover.
Yeah.
They got 2 hands, 2 eyes, 2 ears, they don't have 3 ears. So the point is that the day we realize that the countries can become great, it's not just it was born great, you make it happen. And unless you make it happen, it's not going to work. So I think that with this conversation with you today, let people start thinking, do they have a responsibility? Or just say, oh, we got game parks. Do they have a responsibility to make very sure that what we came with, we want to leave a world a better place? If you don't start thinking about that, we'll never make it.
Dr. Manu Chandaria, thank you so much for your time and your insight into NTV Wild Talk. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
You've been watching my conversation with Manu Chandaria, the renowned industrialist, but did you know? Well, now you do. He also is a conservationist, leaving us with a strong message to think about. All right, we're shifting focus from that. It is now time to head to our Wild Pick segment. Here are some of the photos you sent in to demonstrate you love nature and the environment. In the Nairobi National Park, this is a snap of Michelle Yvonne and Sam Kinua. They were enjoying a magnificent view of herbivores. They say they had come across these animals after a game drive and they appreciate and love connecting with wildlife. This is Vera Obare at the Giraffe Centre. She was feeding and also kissing a giraffe. She says she visited on her birthday to appreciate wildlife and nature and that kissing a giraffe was a bucket list check. This is Velma Violetta. She was at the Kenya Wildlife Service headquarters feeding the ostriches, and Velma says she loves animals and nature and feels at peace with animals. In his art studio, this is James Wanjao. He was painting and he's an artist who loves to paint landscapes or anything that occurs naturally. He says he finds it beautiful and loves nature and wild animals. On the left of the photo, this is Diana Makungu at Mount Longonot with some friends. They were posing and say they are nature enthusiasts. If you want your photo showcased on our Wild Pick segment, all you need to do is like our NTV Wild Facebook page and send a photo that shows you celebrating nature via private message. Make sure you include your full name, tell us where the photo was taken, what you were doing and why. So there you've heard some words of wisdom from a conservation elder, that is Dr. Manu Chandaria. No matter who you may be, whether you're a CEO, an industrialist, a manufacturer or a guy straight out of school, having a love and appreciation for nature needs to be a part of who you are. That's where we leave it on NTV Wild Talk with me, Smriti Vidyarthi. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you again Tuesday, 10 p.m.
For behind the scenes.
First job NTV Wild.
Yeah.
How?
But the ideology was you cannot get things done unless both sides are prepared to sit on a table and discuss.
Right, yeah.
Today, because I know I'd go to the doctor, so he won't my pants out.
This is what we call behind the
That awareness and
Yes, he talked about the house. Is it okay?
That you would perhaps not ordinarily associate. Okay.
NTV Wild Talk in partnership with the Kenya Wildlife Service and Wildlife Direct.